Welcome everyone. My name is Faulkner. I'm the online event coordinator for Staff Development for Educators, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today for What's the Big Idea? STEM in the Elementary Classroom, grades K through 5 with Sandi Reyes. Before we start, there are a few things you should know. To allow for Sandi to be heard clearly, attendee microphones are muted. Please use the questions text box on your screen throughout the webinar to ask any questions. We'll use those at our Q&A period at the end. Any audio or video problems you might experience during the presentation can usually be solved by closing any other programs and applications you might have open on your computer. The session is being recorded, and assuming no technical difficulties, you'll receive a link to the archive within 48 hours. And finally, at the end of today's presentation, you will see a short survey. By completing that survey, you do assist us in providing future complimentary webinars. For those who might not know us, Staff Development for Educators provides professional development for pre-K through 12 educators through on-site PD, PD events, web-based PD, and PD resources. We empower educators with research-based, innovative, and rigorous PD that's practical, motivating, and fun. We're pleased to have Sandi Reyes joining us today. Sandi is a National Board Certified Educator and Consultant. Her popular presentations, many of which focus on updating learning for the 21st century, provide pragmatic suggestions for authentic learning experiences that can be implemented seamlessly into existing classroom curriculum and routines. Sandi's inspirational ideas empower teachers to create collaborative learning environments that ignite curiosity and incite creativity. She's the author of Engineer Through the Year, K2 and K through 2 and 3 through 5. Welcome, Sandi. At this point, I'm going to turn it on over to you.
Thank you so much, Faulkner, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to dive right in because I have a lot to share in our half hour together. STEM is a huge topic. I'm going to try to give you the best overview I can and also leave you with some exciting ideas at the end that you can take with you and try in your classroom. But I'm going to start with the basics because I'm not sure what everybody knows and what they don't. So, well, what is it? STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Most people probably already know that if you're attending. But what we really need to talk about is it's not just those used in a silo. We don't think about STEM as anytime I'm doing math, I'm doing STEM. Anytime I'm doing science, I'm doing STEM. Anytime my kids are working on a computer, I'm doing STEM. That's not what we're talking about. That's siloing each one of these content areas. And in STEM, what we really want to do is bring everything together like puzzle pieces, putting it together into one interdisciplinary unit or lesson where everything works together and supports a real-world, authentic look at how each one of these content areas speaks to the main topic. So let me get in and give you some more specific ideas, okay? I don't want to take too much time giving you generalities. I want to give you some specifics. So first thing I want to do is show you one way that I like to introduce kids to a STEM unit. This is called engaging the students. When you begin any kind of lesson or any kind of unit, we want to make sure kids are excited about it. Now, STEM also is very much about building critical thinking skills, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But this activity gets kids not only excited and engaged, but using some critical thinking skills. So I thought I would take a moment and share it with you. This is just a simple PowerPoint slide that I've created, and it's numbered. But there's a hidden picture underneath, and the hidden picture is a clue to what our new STEM or problem-based learning topic is going to be all about. In a classroom, I would ask students to call out numbers. And as I reveal each number, students will have to start putting the clues together to guess what that picture is and therefore what our topic is going to be about. You could also get some formative assessment done this way, as we like to build in our formative assessment naturally into our STEM units, by asking kids to answer questions correctly in order to get a chance to guess. So let's just pretend that I've called out to the audience and someone has asked for the number 8. What do we think that is? Now I'm going to ask some guiding questions. What do you think the picture might be? Why do you think that? What do you see in the picture that makes you think that? What did it remind you of? How did you come up with that? Those are the kinds of questions I would ask during this activity. And the reason that I bring that up is because those are the kinds of questions we ask in a STEM unit. It's not just about teaching science and teaching math, but it's about developing critical thinking skills by asking the right questions, and instead of giving the answers, asking guiding questions along the way. So then perhaps the next student comes up with, well, I need 7, because they're thinking, let me see more of that. If I had gone down here to 48, maybe they would not have asked for 40, 39, or 47. There's not a lot there. I also always ask, why did you choose that number? Because helping kids think strategically is also part of STEM. And as we go through and the students start to reveal, it becomes fairly obvious at some point that we are talking about space. We are talking about rockets. And this, as many of you know, is a pretty popular STEM topic. If you've not tried STEM at all in your classroom, this is a pretty easy entry point to jump in and talk about rockets. Now, depending on your grade level, we could have used this picture to launch a unit on space. We could launch a unit on force and motion. We could launch a unit on air specific to force and motion, or energy in general. It doesn't matter. There are so many different pieces of science and math and technology and engineering that can go to this. But the idea of rockets is engaging to kids. So I suggest that we start there if you've not started anywhere else. So now, specifically, after we've done all that, the kids are excited. I might say to them, what do you know about rockets already? Because, very often we do those KWL charts. I'm not going to go through the whole KWL chart, but I will start by asking kids what they think they know and what problems might arise with rockets that we could solve. So here are just a couple. I could ask kids to build a rocket that flies the farthest. Let them know right up front, right at that very beginning, that first day, guys, here's your problem, here's your challenge. We're going to have to build a rocket that flies the farthest. I could also ask them to build a rocket that flies the highest. Or I could ask them to build a rocket that lands within a very specific certain area. Now the key here is that I'm going to then relate whichever one of these I choose to its real-world application of some sort. And it could have to do with space, or it could have to do with other ways that we use maybe a quote-unquote land rocket. Because we have to come at STEM from a big picture, a big idea. So that's just kind of one quick entry and example of what it would look like to think about the start of a STEM unit. We engage the students, we relate it to what they already know, we present the problem straight up front that we're going to have to solve, maybe not today, but in a few weeks after we've done our studies. And we find out what the kids already know so that we can then be flexible in our planning about the experiences they're going to need to get to that point. Let me take a few minutes now to give you a little bit more background information on what STEM looks like and the components of STEM in a classroom. And then at the end, we'll go through and take a look at some great other examples that you can borrow. All right, so STEM, first of all, as you may have already figured out, is problem-based learning. If you've already heard about project-based learning, you should know that problem-based learning is a subset of project-based learning. This diagram gives you a pretty good, straight example of what problem-based learning looks like as compared to traditional learning. You'll notice that in the problem-based learning, we're going backward. We give the problem up front. The kids tell us what they already know or what they think they know so that the teacher can get rid of the stuff she thought she had to teach but doesn't, can identify misconceptions and discover what she does need to teach, and then set up examples in the classroom and activities and opportunities for the kids to realize what else they need to know in order to solve this problem. Then you go about your lessons and your activities, and you help the kids learn things so that in the end they can solve that problem. Now this is in great contrast to what we traditionally do in education. Usually we say to the kids, okay, we're going to do an activity now or a unit on space. Here's a bunch of really great information about space. I'm going to show you some videos. I'm going to give you some books. I'm going to provide you with some facts. I want you to memorize all of this so that you can learn your science. And then at the very end, maybe I'll give you some sort of task. Well, there's a very big difference because when you assign the task ahead of time, it provides the motivation for the learning. You no longer have to hear, why am I learning this? Another thing that STEM is student-centered. Hopefully you've noticed that in my dialogue up to this point, I've talked about how I'm letting the kids solve all these problems and how I'm letting the kids tell me what they know and what they need to know. It's really more about the student leading the charge and the teacher backing it up. Now that's not to say the teacher doesn't plan the lessons or the activity opportunities, but the teacher needs to be flexible in seeing where the students go each day with that activity or opportunity and then designing the next one in response to what happened today, not just because it was the next thing in my unit. It allows the students opportunities to explore and ask questions on their own, and sometimes they ask questions that we don't know the answers to, and we have to be okay with that and to help them and yourself devise ways to solve those questions. Now it's also learning through doing, and I love this particular diagram because it really shows why kids need to do what they need to do to learn. Now take a look up here. We do a lot of reading, hearing, and seeing, especially in science teaching, because we don't get a lot of time to do it during our day with ELA and math taking up so much of our time in elementary school. Look down here, though, at the bottom pyramid. 70% of what students say, not what the teacher says, what students say is remembered. What that means is we need to give kids time to communicate and collaborate. They need to talk out the science and the work that they're doing. And if you take a look at 90% of what we say and do is what they remember. This is why STEM is such a great opportunity for elementary students. It gives kids the opportunity to talk about the science, the engineering, the math that's involved, and to put it into use as they're learning it, not at the end, but as they're learning it. STEM is about collaboration, creativity, and communication. Take a look at this poll. The gap in the U.S. workforce, that gap, the biggest lack, is a lack of communication, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. We're sending kids out into the workforce without these skills. What's wonderful about this is this gives us the perfect opportunity to turn STEM into STEAM and bring in the arts or STREAM for reading and writing as well. So we have to make sure that it's not just kids sitting and following directions to create something, that we're using what we've learned to actually talk and collaborate and work together. And lastly, let me just share with you, it's about authentic learning experiences. Take a look at the picture for the comparison, again, between traditional and authentic. How can you change things up in your classroom to provide more authentic experiences for kids? How are you evaluating students? Are you simply still giving them paper tests, or are you giving them multiple opportunities to show what they know? And a culminating problem, performance task, culminating activity, whatever we want to call it in STEM, is the perfect authentic opportunity for kids to show what they know. It also breaks down a lot of the barriers that students have to learning and proving what they've learned. Moving forward, let me just show you quickly that we're using a backward design technique when we do this. We don't start by putting together individual little lessons. We start by thinking, what do I want the kids to know and be able to do at the very end? How are they going to show that to me? What is that problem they'll have to solve? What is the task they'll have to do? Okay, now let me back up and figure out what opportunities and learning experiences do they need to get there. Now, when we put all of this together, that's what STEM is. And we do all of this through the content areas of science, technology, engineering, math, reading, writing, and the arts. This is a really long definition, but here are some key phrases: interdisciplinary approach, rigorous academic concepts, real-world lessons, application. They relate to the community, work, and the global enterprise. We help kids understand how school and what they learn in school connects to the real world. And that's a little bit of a difference. Now, I wouldn't be speaking to STEM if I didn't take just a moment to speak to the engineering design process. Engineering is not a traditional content area that we speak of or that we have taught in elementary schools, although it's becoming so much more popular now. Engineering is when we make something. It's when anything that is man-made has been engineered, and anything that is man-made is called a technology. So the technology part of STEM isn't just speaking to digital, hardware, software kinds of things. Technologies are anything that have been engineered. So to engineer something is to create or design a process or a product that solves a problem or satisfies a need. And to do this, there's a traditional engineering design process. Now, you may have seen several of these out there. I'm going to share with you the one that I wrote that I use in my books because I feel like it really truly encompasses what happens. During the investigate phase, we're spending a lot of time learning. So we spend a lot of time in a STEM unit in the investigate phase. When we brainstorm completely individually. Now, typically you think of brainstorming as a bunch of people sitting around shooting ideas, right? But for me, brainstorming means individual brainstorming where kids shoot their ideas down onto paper quietly, individually by themselves. And there's a reason for this, because step number 3 is when they get together and plan. And if they have not had some time individually to come up with their own ideas, then not every child will have an opportunity to share or have anything to share. You may get 1 or 2 children who are just taking over. I want every child to have something to bring to the group and to share with the group. So that's why we take about 10 minutes, 20 minutes, depending on the project, to brainstorm individually. When they come together to share, they create their group plan, and everybody must sign off on that plan. There are many ways you can have students sign off on plans, but the idea is at the end of the day, the entire collaborative group, and I usually ask students to work in groups of 4, agree to this one plan that they're going to do. Then they will build or create this plan. And once that's built, they'll test and present. Now, this is not a fixed process like any other process. You can come in anywhere and go out anywhere. And sometimes as you're building, you're testing, then you're adjusting, and then you're testing, and sometimes you're going back and doing more investigation. So it's really not perfectly linear. You can kind of come and go in and out of it. So as kids are solving problems or devising new products, we're taking them through this process and helping them to identify which part of the process they're in and why each piece is necessary. All right, now when you go to design your own STEM unit, and I'm going to go through this pretty fast, you're going to start very open-ended. Make it interesting and relatable. Think about that end product or challenge. Then what skills and standards am I going to incorporate here? How am I going to build intentional experiences, hands-on work that will allow them to do that? And how am I going to be flexible enough to let children guide the learning? I'm going to give you some examples of some that I've done and then some more examples of things that you can try too. This was my chocolate factory activity. I did it with kindergartners. The problem was you've inherited a chocolate factory and there are so many problems with it. You don't have any chocolate in stock. You've got to go source some chocolate. You've got to develop some new candy bars because nobody's buying the ones that you've got. You've got to make sure your factory is running well, so you better get familiar with how machines work. You need to get out there and do some surveys to find out what people want. and you need to get out there and do some marketing once you've created it. And as you can see here, that's exactly what my kids did. First, they built their own little mini working chocolate factory. Then we went out and we did some surveys, and we used Unifix cubes to analyze the results of the different ingredients to think people wanted in their chocolate bars. We analyzed that data in order to determine what kind of recipe we wanted to create for our chocolate bars. And then we made those chocolate bars. We invited people in to a chocolate bar tasting where they were only allowed to taste one. So they created some marketing to get people to want to buy or taste their chocolate bars. And we actually did have a third grade class come in, and they had to go to every table, listen to the sales pitches, look at the marketing, and decide which one they wanted to have. And we did exit surveys. And then we went on and participated in surveys of our own to learn what surveys are and how useful they are. And thank goodness the Wonka company was running a great survey for us at the time. Now, we spent probably about 8 to 12 weeks doing this, but I built in so many standards across the content areas, and the kids loved it. Now here's just a little one for 3 Little Pigs. This is just one little engineering activity that we did. We just had 100 index cards and a roll of tape, and we had to build a house that would stand up to the huffing and puffing of the wolf and also hold up to the wolf crawling on top of it. I got myself a little wolf beanie baby and a fan, and the kids went to work. So this could grow into a much larger unit. But for the purposes of this activity, it was just what I call a quickie engineering design activity. It got the kids excited, we used it as our engage, and then the teacher went off and did more in her unit. All fairy tales and nursery rhymes, by the way, have problems in them. Find the problem, ask kids to devise the solution. In Water, Water Everywhere, we took third graders through 12 weeks of a study of water and all its properties. And then at the very end, after being exposed to water issues throughout the world, the students had to devise solutions to those water problems. They built models of the water cycle, not being told how to do it, but creating their own ideas of what a model should look like and how it would work. And they tried to solve problems like getting dirty water over to other places or cleaning water. And then we did a Go Green challenge. And as we started learning about the environment and the Go Green movement, the kids really, after being exposed to so many different issues, linked very much into littering. That was what my kids got very excited about in that kindergarten class. So we did an entire unit on not just going green in general, but we narrowed it down into littering. And the problem they solved was how to get people to be more aware of the effects of littering and how to keep our campus, our school campus, clean, because we'd go out every Friday and clean it up. And they developed several different ideas for campaigns, and different groups worked on different campaigns. One group decided that they wanted to write speeches and go to every single classroom and deliver their speeches to get kids to understand how they shouldn't litter. Another group devised a poster campaign, and they created their posters and devised the plan for where they should put their posters based on traffic patterns in the school. And then a third group actually created a puppet show that was used as a commercial during our morning announcements, because we did those through video. So there are lots of different ways that kids can go about this. Here are a couple more ideas, because I've got just a few more minutes with you. If you're doing something with Humpty Dumpty, instead of just playing with Humpty, let's answer the question, are we safe? And here are some problems that you could solve. Maybe you could build a safer wall for Humpty. Maybe you could build a new play area so he wouldn't go up on the wall at all. Maybe you could design safety gear for Humpty and wrap that egg up and see if you could keep him safe when he fell. Or you could devise a way to get him down from the wall. And then you can relate all of these back out to the real world examples of how we keep safe. How about if you're studying spiders or bats? Maybe you could ask the question, does Mother Nature know best? And maybe you could give them a problem like, how can we use what we know about animals to design new technologies? Did you know that scientists use a study of spider webs when designing bridges? Did you know that sonar is based on echolocation used by bats and dolphins and some whales? Did you know that we can learn about building tunnels through a study of worms? Or we can build levees through studies of beaver dams? We take these ideas and we make them more rigorous and bigger instead of just doing some fun stuff with spiders and bats. How about caterpillars and butterflies? Instead of just looking at the basic life cycle, we could think about how a habitat and animal affect each other. So instead of going out and buying the hanging green netted environment to hatch your butterflies in, maybe you could ask kids to design one and then put your egg in there and see if it's conducive. Think about things like in social studies. If you're studying Columbus or other explorers, maybe we tie weather into that. Why is weather an important consideration for explorers? And you could give them problems like design a boat that withstands severe weather, or devise a plan for tools to be used to predict the weather while at sea. See, all of these things get right at the heart of science standards. They involve math application of not only content, but the practices of mathematics. They involve technology for research and design, but also devising new technologies. And of course, we're going through that engineering design process the whole way. How about combining something like mixtures and the westward movement? And talk about separating gold from other materials when you've got a mixture of it. You could create a system for separating gold from other materials. How exciting is that for kids? Watch a couple episodes of Gold Rush, you know, the pieces of it that are safe to show. Start looking at your current curriculum and thinking, how can I STEMatize it? How can I make it more student-centered? How can I add a design challenge? How can I bring those problems up to the front and engage kids in learning? If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me. Reyes.Sandi@gmail.com. You can ask me for ideas about STEM engineering. You can ask me for the ideas I've presented if you didn't have time to copy them all down. You can ask me for that number reveal slide. I'm happy to send you that slide and you can put your own picture behind it and use it in your classrooms. If you have any other questions, I hope you've sent them through the chat room because Faulkner, I'm ready to answer them.
All right, thanks, Sandy. I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation. And I am going to take a minute and let everybody submit any questions that they might have in the questions box on their screen. And in the meantime, I do want to thank everybody for attending today, and we would like to offer everybody a 10% discount off SDE PD events or on-site training by using the promo code W032117, today's date with the W in front of it, before April 21st, 2017. You might be interested in saving 10% and joining Sandy and 6,000 other educators at SDE's 2017 National Conference in Las Vegas this July, with 6 strands covering pre-K, K, first grade, second grade, differentiated instruction, and teaching math, all presented by experts in their field. It is probably the largest PD event for educators and an experience you won't forget. You can learn more about the conference at sde.com/national. And of course, if you can't make it to a seminar or conference, SDE is always ready to provide customized on-site or web-based training that meets your school or district's unique needs. And for more information about PD events, training, or resources, call 877-388 2054 or visit us at sde.com. And we do invite you to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest under the username SDE4Educators. And Sandy, I'm trying to remember your Twitter handle, and now I was just looking at it, now it's escaping me.
It's at the STEM Lady.
At the STEM Lady, thank you. I just had it in front of me. So I invite you to follow Sandy as well. And I will say at this point, it looks like we don't have any questions for you, Sandy.
All right.
So you are free to go. Thanks, everybody. Just a reminder, live attendees do receive a follow-up email in 48 hours that does have a link to the archived recording of the webinar, and we do invite you to do that survey on your way out as well. I want to thank Sandy for joining us today, and I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation and everybody enjoys the rest of your day. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.